Welcome to Listening with China Blue. This is a podcast that focuses on how listening not only informs us about what is occurring in the world around us, but also helps us connect with others, build stronger businesses, strengthens our mental health, and become more creative and compassionate individuals. As more and more people practice attentive listening in a community, it becomes a community building practice that strengthens our mental health as we learn from our neighbors. I will be interviewing people from all walks of life to learn how listening has informed them in their field and helped them to make intelligent decisions. They will be artists, musicians, composers, dancers, business people, psychologists, neuroscientists, and Buddhists, to name a few. About me, I'm an internationally exhibiting sound-based artist. In my work, Discovering Unheard Sounds, I realized that the core component that drove my work was simply listening. That realization put me on the path of speaking about and helping people learn to become better listeners. I began with leading sound walks, which I continue to do in the upstate New York region to help people learn to listen from nature. And now, tune your ears to this podcast to learn about the power of listening.
The author of A Field of My Own.
And do pay attention until the end for further
tells
information
about
on how to start your own listening practice, share it with
McVey
others,
is a lifelong creative and environmentalist.
and to support listening
The Chronicles
with
are
China
intimate,
Blue.
two-decade relationship with a flagging orchard in the Hudson Valley. As an architect and general contractor, you will hear how she moved an enormous 180-year-old hand-hewn Amish barn to the property to make her sustainable home as she dealt with snarky contractors, a tippling partner, puzzling neighbors, concerning caretakers, black rat snakes, and coyote chases. Yet each day brings her joy and serenity. You will hear all about her acoustic memoirs of place that began in the country, the Hudson Valley, continues to New York City, and then on to the island of St. Croix. Welcome, Cynthia.
Well, hi, China. Thanks very much for inviting me to this
Oh,
podcast.
thank you. Thank you so much for being here. So wonderful to meet you recently through our mutual friend, David Rothenberg, on the actual date of the release of your new book in your home, in your wonderful, wonderful home. And it was so great to see your property and to see how much you've done there. And one thing that we've talked about since then was about the sounds that you had heard as you got to know your new property, and which is now a number of years ago, and how it continues to linger today and drive your sense of place.
Yeah, it was interesting when you proposed this conversation. I hadn't really thought about the sounds, and yet when I go back to my book, which does cover the 25 years that I've been here, I realized I did quite talk about noises quite a bit. For example, my dog barking, and I didn't. It hadn't occurred to me how important the sounds were. You know, when I write, what you try to do as a writer is bring people to the place with you and bring them into your space. And I think of myself as a very visual person. I also know that my nose is extremely sensitive. I pick up on things before anyone else does. I've always thought my audio capabilities were a little underwhelming. But what I realized actually was that maybe I just needed to recast them, because I know so many people who really put a premium on having music on all the time, for example. And what I realized is that I don't do that. And I've always had all kinds of excuses for it, but I realize it's because I really want to be in the place that I am right now. And I don't want anything interfering with my understanding of that place. And I didn't realize how important that was to me. I mean, I've known it, but I'm not someone who's ever owned a Walkman or earbuds. I don't walk down the street with
Right.
those on. I don't, and I've never done that. When I ran, I would see people running with them, and I just wouldn't do that. I wanted to hear my feet hitting the ground. I wanted to hear who was coming up behind me. I wanted to hear what else was going on wherever I was. So in a sense, having something else filling your ears takes you away from place. And what I do here, aside from not, you know, interfering with those kinds of ear placed mechanisms, is I also have a very strong, um, you know, I don't know, dislike of white noises that mask things,
Mhm. Sure.
vacuums I just find really offensive, or lawnmowers, or blowers, or all those kinds of noises that kind of, I mean, they are part of the place on some level, but they take away the sounds that I love. Um, so
Right. I found that so interesting when we were talking before about how you weren't totally alert to what you listened to until we started having the conversation, and how it drifted to the point of where you don't wear earbuds, you don't have a streaming music library that's going through your head as you're going through your day, which is such a it's extremely common experience for most people to, as you put it, in a sense, block out the world around you, and that for me too uh, is a tragedy in a sense that you're not paying attention to what is evolving around you as the world turns.
and creates that connection with the place along with all the visual clues. And what I started to realize was that, the when you hear certain sounds, they're clues about what something might be happening or might about to happen.
Mhm.
You can judge distance in the lawnmower from where it is, or
Absolutely.
and so it's all these clues that keep you in place. And and I'm not saying it's because I'm paranoid or anything. It's actually just a sense of order that I have with the space. And I think, along with this notion, it's actually something else. I would say even visually, I do the same thing. I hardly ever have lights on either. It's
Nice.
almost all natural light, and
Right.
except at night when you actually have to. But even at night, it takes me a long time to turn a light on, because I wanted, it has to be really like I have to find that pair of socks or something that might necessitate turning a light on. But otherwise, I'll rummage around in the early morning in the dark until I'm actually forced to turn light on. So there's something about just leaving things the way they are. But I think when I was constructing my barn here on my property, and because the property is quite um, seductive and alluring, I wanted to make sure I was letting as much of the outside world in. So I have these very large windows, and visually, there's a lot that goes in and out of them. They frame different views, and I've created gardens to basically fill those spaces as well, or see the poplars in the distance. But also, they're wide open. So I have a
Mhm.
huge screen, and at night I sleep in a bedroom with a huge screen, and it's like being in a tent. It's like
Oh,
literally being outdoors at night. And I thought I might just read the opening bit of this thing, because um, there's an essay in my book called "Open Window," and I'll just give it a little bit of a, maybe I'll read a paragraph or two and then skip and read a couple other pieces of it because of the sound related pieces.
thank you.
I sleep with the window open, wide. It's not just the window, but the wall that opens. The 5 by 5 foot pane sweeps over Dexter's pillow. Dexter's my dog. Brushes the foot of the bed and is secured by a 2 foot stump against my bureau, full of winter sweaters and pajamas I rarely wear. The great outdoors lies just beyond a sheer nylon screen. The pulsing, screaming, shrieking, clicking, crashing, fluttering, threatening, unabashed nocturne washes into the room. And so I'm a voyeur of the night. I adored living in a tent in the Peruvian Amazon decades ago, but I don't go camping. There's no need. I have the benefits of camping all the time. My bed's proximity to nature is akin to sleeping in a tent, but with a good deal more comfort among Belgian linens and down stuffed duvet propped on a half dozen of pillows. I'm going to skip a little bit to get back to sounds. When I turn off the lamp, my eyes adjust to the moon's light in the room and outdoor world beyond. Without the distractions of sight, the litany of sounds and activity floods the room, seems louder. The air is moist. I sense possibility in my own vulnerability. 30 feet outside of the window, a stand of poplars, also known as dollar trees, because their leaves shimmer silver on their stems, amplifies the slightest breeze. And then of course there's a lot of coyotes and owls out there. I actually found a couple
Oh,
little audio bits that I could play if you'd want me to. Um,
sure,
I'm sure,
sure.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners have their own experiences with these, but I'm surrounded by coyotes at night. My point was in that reading is what I discovered was that I hear more when I'm not seeing as much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, because
Exactly.
you're totally focused on the sounds. And
Cynthia, people's dominant sense is vision.
yeah,
And sound is always there. Our ears are always on. And in a funny way, they do, as you put it so well, they help us anticipate events. So if you can hear a car behind you approaching, for example, long before you see it. So it helps you frame your world, and sound underlies everything. And as you put it so well, we don't pay much attention to it
you have to
until it's
rely on it
not.
more or something, or it's gone, and then you realize something is off.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember a couple years ago? I'm sure you heard this. I think this is true. When there was that eclipse that we all went out to see, and it turns out at the moment of the eclipse, all wildlife goes silent. And I think,
Exactly.
it was one of those things where you wouldn't expect that, but you suddenly, when it happened, you realized how quiet it was when everything was quiet, you know? And the absence of sound you noticed. But the night sounds are particular, because they aren't the same sounds as the daytime either. So you would, if you put me in a dark room and I had to identify it, I would definitely recognize those sounds as my night sounds. There's, peepers in the spring times and barred owls and great horned owls, coyotes, all kinds of insects, trains. I have the train in the distance,
Oh,
um,
nice.
tooting and not the Amtrak, but the one on our side on the west side of the river. And
Sure.
and then, there's fewer sirens at night, but what's interesting is during the day, if there's a siren that goes off, the coyotes will respond to that siren. And so
Oh.
I'll end up knowing where that they actually have their den,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise you wouldn't know. And that might be a place that I would avoid in the future walking during the day. Yeah, so I was actually going to talk about how the sounds are different, of course, during the day, and how if you're taking a walk through the field, there are even different sounds than when you're walking through the woods. So like I also have a little voice memo of, the crunching of the leaves as you go through the forest, which you
Sure.
don't have when you're walking in the field, unless you're walking in a frozen field through things that are kind of, you know, brittle. Um, another sound is there's that whole then in the morning just before dawn it gets a lot quieter. There's this transition moment, and then dawn starts to happen, and you start to hear other kinds of sounds, robins and so forth. And I have large groups of turkeys that cluck across the property as well, and I can
Oh.
hear them at a long distance. Yesterday I heard them a lot. But woodpeckers are another one, and they're not, although they are nature. For me, woodpeckers hold a very special place in my horror heart because
Oh,
they because it
wow.
was about 5 years after I put up my barn. they found my barn as a place of interest.
Oh, no.
Yes. So I wrote an essay about that, and I thought I might just read again just a couple of paragraphs from this essay called Woodpeckers. Early midwinter mornings, I awoke to the tormenting, persistent knocks of woodpeckers on the walls of my barn home. Dozens of times every morning, I jumped up, ran out, clapped and shouted, hoping to startle the little fiends. The pattern became predictable. At first, my arrival was discouragement enough, and the bird took flight as I opened the door. Over time, I had to clap or flap or shout. That stopped working too. I banged a garbage can to get its attention and jumped up and down. It flew away only to return minutes later. From its perch 20 feet above me, the woodpecker looked down and chirped for every shout. Chirp, chirp, chirp. It was not until I clapped loudly and threateningly with antagonizing persistence that it took notice and flew away. Sometimes it flew 20 feet down the side of the barn and settled in again. I followed, clapped some more, beat the side of the barn, and it moved with zero commitment. We went all the way around the barn, stopping every 20 feet like that several times. After a half dozen exchanges, the bird looked at me, remained in its high perch, threw a chirp in my direction, and continued to bury its face in the siding and insulation. Torture was doled out not only through the reverberating, drumming, but also in the knowledge of the very real damage the birds wreaked on my once tightly insulated home. So what I was trying to get across there was, what could be an innocent woodpecker, thumping against a tree or something, which could be a kind of a fun sound. It's a lovely drum, becomes
Mhm.
this sort of unsettling feeling that has all these connotations. It's, if you knew it wasn't actually doing damage, maybe you wouldn't hate it so much, but it was doing damage, you know. So anyway, we the story, there's an actual story that's kind of built into that one, but I wanted to again raise this notion of how these sounds create emotional impact, right? I think it's
Absolutely.
right. And it's not just a sound in the distance, it's something that actually is affecting you. Um,
And how what can be sounding quaint when it's pecking at a tree is threatening when it's pecking at your
yeah,
house.
exactly. And you're like, please go to the tree, please. Um, and then after in the morning, then I often listen to the news and I put my espresso machine on, and there's all those sounds that are associated with creating a perfect cafe latte.
Mm.
But I go out to the pool most mornings in the summer, where I do a fair amount of writing, because the pool is just this outdoor space to enjoy. And I don't like lounge. I mean, I don't lounge around in my bikini or something. I'm sitting as if it's an outdoor room, like in a sofa. And then all these things happen out there. Different sounds than what I've been hearing in the lawn around my house or the field, and because it's filled with pollinating flowers and trees, and so there's a squirrel that comes and breaks open hazelnuts, and you can hear that going on, and then the mockingbirds are kind of relentless and fun, and they'll go from one post to another or a tree 30 feet away, and just they have quite a wide range of different kinds of sounds. But the ones that are the most fun, and again in that sense of warning, are the hummingbirds. You can hear
Mm.
them coming before they arrive, and
Oh, nice.
right, you hear the buzzing of them, not some kind of like, whistle or chirp or something. You just hear their wings going
Right.
so
Yeah.
fast, right? So I thought I'd just read a little section out of my book that's called Pool Garden, which is when I created this incredibly enthusiastic, exuberant garden around my pool, um, that's filled with all kinds of stuff. When I sit in the arbor's shade, ruby-throated hummingbirds dart about, ricochet into one another in invisible territory disputes. I am in their peripheral vision. They pay me no mind until I pull out my camera phone. Then, of course, zoom, they're gone. Males catch the sun with their splendiferous translucent sapphire breast. Females are shades of gray. Some mornings, sitting in silence with my laptop and coffee, these zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.2 ounce helicopters buzz so fast I fear one may spear me. They are the only birds able to not only hover in place but fly backwards, accounting for their helicopter deportment. On occasion, one hangs above me, looks in the eye, cocks its head to study my ear to see if it too has nectar. No! They fly back and forth at up to 60 miles per hour, persistent, relentless, almost bouncing off one another like magnets of the same persuasion. I'm not concerned about their ability to keep up with their fructose demand, given their high velocity and metabolism, as they have plenty to pillage. But it is hard to imagine that after they've spent the summer on Field Farm, these fragile, high-tech birds make their way thousands of miles to Mexico and Texas to overwinter like the monarch butterflies. Anyway, they're just such a part of the experience at the pool. I mean, there are just so many of them. And there's just I mean, you can't really capture the sound, but it's a zoom. It's a zoom. And the zoom reflects, just like on a cartoon, this notion of kind of coming into, audio view, if you will, and then going beyond it and coming back again, right? There's like this curve in the sound, right?
Right, right.
And you can hear two of them at once doing that, and it just
Wow.
they they're not quite as threatening as, say, the huge carpenter bees, but they they are quite rambunctious.
But tell me, what is it that is in your garden that attracts all these animals? I mean, the insects and the birds and everything. You must have planted a garden with that in mind.
Yeah, I almost everything I have, I is a local native, bush or or flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'm not sure about the trumpet vine, but they love the trumpet vine, and they love wisteria. They love,
The hummingbirds.
yes, they love the
Oh,
trumpet vine because the flowers is the same shape as their long beaks, right?
right,
There's
right.
that adaptation. But there's just tons of different kinds of flowers. There's something for everybody, and there are also a lot of bees. And I was thinking about that. One of the reasons I don't go for walks in the afternoon in the summer with my dog through the field is because there are so many bees on all the asters. There's just asters all over.
Oh,
And
wow.
he just runs around terrified because he always gets one or the other on him. He always ends up with a bee sting of some kind.
Oh, poor guy.
But we also have very large bumblebees and lots of butterflies. Of course, they make less noise, but the bees certainly have their specific, tenor and pitch. Um, and then there's other man-made sounds. While I'm out of the pool, I get super sensitive to things like, the pool pump coming on, but also my neighbors if they're mowing their lawns in the distance, um, or whether, I'm pretty far from almost anybody, but there's so much traffic now on 9W, and when the leaves start to come down or if there's cloud cover, you can hear some of the traffic in the distance, like I'm sure
Mhm.
everybody does. But uh,
And if you've mentioned your your intense dislike of chainsaws.
oh, we were going to get to that, but
Oh, you
yeah,
were
we
holding
were.
out on
So,
that.
well, so I was thinking the other thing is I have an orchard next door to me that's not my orchard, it's someone else's orchard, and one of the things that I hear quite a bit, not much, but periodically they run their tractor to through the trees or whatever, and so that's sort of an industrial sound. But what's also kind of fun, and I really love this sound, is there's a whole team of Jamaicans that work there, and I can hear them talking from hundreds of feet away, and they're always laughing, and they have so much to talk about. I think they've been together all day, every day for years, and
Oh
yet
my God.
they can have these conversations, and they're laughing, and I can, I don't hear what they're saying, but I can hear it's got a it's got a really happy tenor to it. You just feel like it feels good. Um, but yeah, one of the things that was, you know, there's a lot more sound, when windows are open and you're connected to the outdoors, but it's different situation when you're closed in or wintertime for a whole variety of reasons, right? Because you've
Sure.
closed out sounds, but also a lot of things are hibernating or they've migrated or whatever. But during COVID also had a different sort of feel to it. You know, there was a lot less sound, there was a lot less movement. Um, and during that time, someone across the street started to clear 15 acres of
Oh,
woods. And
no.
and it was just chainsaw, chainsaw, chainsaw. And then dump trucks to fill in the ravine that used to be on the side of the road along the other side of the road. And so every 8 minutes, a huge dump truck would come in and you'd hear that beep, 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 and then the huge flap opening and clanking
Uh-huh.
shut. And it was such a disturbing sound. And I was recording them because I wanted to put this guy in jail because I think what he was dumping was illegal. In fact, at the beginning, it was going on in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning,
Oh,
and it
no.
was so loud that I could hear it from thousands of feet away. And yeah, I ended up running out there in my nightshirt, yelling at the truck driver. And I told him if he ever came at night again, I would report him, and he didn't. So I think
Oh,
there was
good.
something illegal going on there. But anyway, those sounds, I find those sort of industrial truck sounds kind of grating, right? You and I were talking about this, but this notion of they're straining, a lot of them. They're straining, and um, and you feel sorry for them almost because they don't really want to do what they're doing. If you have an empathy for a dump truck, maybe that's kind of a psycho thing. But it just reminded me of something else. So there is a part, at one point, um, you know, maybe 12 years ago, I bought a tractor myself. And
Oh,
I can't say I love being on the tractor, but the last essay in the book is all about being on the tractor and um, kind of going back and forth in almost rows. Um, and kind of contemplating all the different parts of the land and the blackberry bushes that are in some places and the old apple trees that used to be standing in others. But there's this one other piece that might be amusing from a sound perspective, which is when I have a kind of a new boyfriend on the land with me, and he decides he wants to take the tractor out. The men always want to be on the tractor. And I'm like, no, you can do the chainsawing. I'm going to do the tractor. But um, so I'm trying, I wasn't, I had forgotten about this. Here it is. Despite the relentless drone, I would rather be on this tractor than have others do it for me. I find it hard to listen when others brush hog, others like the caretaker from hell or the boyfriend in my life at that moment. From the house or an apple tree, I hear them hit rocks. Rocks I generally know about and would have avoided. My heart goes out to the little John Deere as it bangs and grinds and fails. The engine turns off, and in the minutes of silence, an assessment is made. Things are moved out of the way. I bite my tongue when they return to the house. I don't ask what happened and whether the tractor is okay. Anyway, it's just that hearing the tractor hit a rock was another one of those moments where you go, "Oh no." Another another tragedy. But anyway, so there are all kinds of sounds, I guess, is the point.
on my property too, the sound of the shovel hitting the rock is the most common experience. I didn't know what kind of ground I was inheriting because when I bought my property, everything looks lush and green and happy and thriving. And then I walk out and I bought all these plants and I start trying to
And
dig a hole
you can't get anywhere, right?
and the shovel goes in a half of an inch.
Exactly. So you're on a rock ledge. So
And
there's the rock ledge. Yeah.
then wait a minute. I jump on the shovel. That doesn't work. Okay, so I go out and get a pickaxe. Okay, I'm going to buy a freaking pickaxe. I hit the pickaxe. I'm going, oh, I'm screwed.
You have to move over for it. Just well, so it all depends on whether there's a specific sized rock right there, or whether you're
No.
actually on a rock ledge, right?
I'm on a rock ledge that goes from my property all the way, as it was explained to me, all the way to the downtown Kingston, which is, I don't know how many miles that is. And when my neighbor was explaining this to me, I was going, okay, I guess I have to let go this idea of planting and
Well, or you do raised beds, which just to
let
me
the
feels
land to
it
be
feels
the land.
yeah, that's sort of where I am. I mean, you can do raised beds, but it's not you're just fighting everything when you do that.
Oh, then you have to irrigate them and you have to
Yeah,
do other stuff.
exactly.
It's like, no, no, no.
So one of the fun sounds in the fall, as much as I don't like Canada geese, one of the fun sounds is that there's 1 or 2 days in the fall where
Yeah,
dozens of geese flocks will go overhead,
right.
dozens of
Yeah.
them, right? And you see them all going, and you can hear the honking in the distance, and then your eye has to kind of train on them, right? Because they're so far, you have to get your eyes into focus. You can hear them again before you can see them
Yeah,
and
yeah.
before you but once I was out and I heard flapping and I looked
Oh.
up and they were swans. Like I just heard only the flapping of the wings, which I thought was really cool. It was just a sound I'll never forget, because how often do you actually just hear the flapping of the wings? Um, yeah. So um, we so that that's sort of I guess like my place here in the field, on the trails, on the farm, by the pool, in my room. There's car doors occasionally, there's dogs barking, there's people. But we
Oh,
also
and you forgot in the well. I want to come back to the
oh, the
well.
well, right. So
Such an amazing thought.
yeah. So there's the first time I ever walked on this property before I owned it. Um, I didn't see this well, but that's because it didn't exist. It's actually not on my property. It's on the neighbor's property.
Oh.
They were going to put in a bunch of houses and then they didn't, but they had put in wells and were doing septic testing and that kind of thing. So there's this well right next to this graveyard that I go visit when I bring friends here. And I try to remember to bring stones because there are no more stones right around it. I think I've thrown them down. I try to, and acorns don't do it.
Oh,
But you have to find like a nice little pebble, and yeah, I try to take the top of the well off very gently so people don't know what they're going to be about to experience because I haven't told them what I'm going to do. I take the well top off without trying to hit anything, and then I drop the pebble down, and I don't know why, but I feel like it's 80 feet. I just have this sense of time between when I let go of the pebble and it hits this puddle down below and it reverberates through the whole well. And it's just an amazing sound. It's so beautiful and pleasing. And, and then, or maybe we'll get a handful of smaller pieces and it'll be more, speckly in a sense. But it's
hmm.
just a beautiful sound. And I put the well top back on, we move on. And we go
Oh,
crunching through the leaves. Yeah. But
your private little symphony, right?
yeah, it's really beautiful. I always wanted to do something with that sound, put it in.
Yeah.
Um, did you want to talk a little bit about some of the other places?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's head on to your city experiences.
Well, so I used to live in the city for 20 years or so, and then I moved up here more full time. And then just recently I moved back. So it feels like a contrast. I'm really living that contrast. And um, I think I was mentioning this to you, but one of the strangest feelings in New York today is that when I had a dog 20 years ago there, we would all go out and we'd meet up with one another. People would have that kind of mindless talk about what kind of dog is your dog and where do they got them from the shelter and the name of the dog. They're not sure what, all this
Sure.
stuff. And now people walk in silence. They
Huh.
don't the only people that are talking are people who are actually walking together because everyone has earbuds in.
Oh,
No one, even when you're walking right up to someone, and the dogs are sniffing each other's private parts, there's still no interaction with the human because the human is otherwise transported by whatever's in their ears, which is a very funny feeling. You're having these, you know, kind of intimate moments, but there's no connection anymore, which is an odd feeling. Um, but the typical sounds in the city, of course, are sirens and traffic and honking, a lot of honking, and dogs barking in the distance, and um, uh, yeah, I mean buses, the kind of the groan of buses going up avenues
mhm,
is something I think we all hear, or at subways, of course, that can be incredibly loud and screeching. Um, and people running to get onto these subways, down the stairs, things
sure,
flying. Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. The doors closing, the warning of the doors closing, the announcements. Those are all such city sounds. I'm sure, anyone who's in the film business has the checklist of city sounds that they pull out so they can throw them onto a film that's going to be there. But what might be interesting is to talk about my other place in St. Croix, which is in the U.S. Virgin Islands, um, and that's where I spend actually my winters for the most part. And there again, very similarly to my place here in the Hudson Valley, I don't even have glass on some of the largest windows. I have these two huge windows that are size of, say, 4 or 5 doors wide, right? They're 180 inches long or
Oh
something, and
my gosh.
all I have is screens on them. But in
Wow.
this case, I literally am in a tropical rainforest, a little tropical rainforest, and so I am just in it. Just like here, I'm in it. But it's not coyotes and owls. It's a whole bunch of different kinds of tree frogs um, and and I don't know, all kinds of insects, and it actually in St. Croix, I don't think I could hear these unless I'm actually out by the pool at the time. There are 8 different kinds of bats in St.
Oh,
Croix
whoa.
that are native. There's not a lot of native wildlife there, but bats we can be very proud of, and we have no rabies on the island, so no one can be fearful. But these bats serve incredibly important functions in pollinating lots of our fruits like mangoes and avocados and so forth. Of course, there's also the ones, hopefully the ones that are near my pool, which are eating all the mosquitoes, which we don't have that many of, all things considered. But there's also gigantic bats that I've never seen, and I'm sure they make an interesting kind of clicking sound, that are like 6 feet wingspan, that eat fish. They're
Ooh.
I don't know what they're called, like pescatorian bats or something. Um, but I live more in a neighborhood. And I'm still sort of set apart, but I live on a top of a little hill in a neighborhood. So I do kind of hear the roads down below me as cars go up one road and take a right and then zoom down the next road. And I can hear that whole thing, and I know where they're going, and I can follow their cars. And then, one of my neighbors might be having a party. I'll hear a lot of music, or I've got neighbors right below me. And you can't see them, but you can hear them. And I can, um, actually, between us at one point, there was like this clicking sound, like this little clicking sound that I started to hear. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is that? What kind of animal is like tapping a little nut, at 1 o'clock in the morning? I was getting really intrigued, but I didn't have the guts to go out and look for it. And then finally, after weeks of hearing it, I told my neighbors, I said, like, what would be making that noise at night? And they said, "Oh, that's Dave. He's making silver, ornaments or something. He's making jewelry." I was like, "Oh," I was like, I was expecting like a raccoon or something. Like maybe just him tapping on some silver. But
The native David.
yeah, right. But like your mind goes wild when you again, it's back to the sound as clue, right? As clue.
Exactly.
And because you can't piece it all together until you've identified it. One time it was 10 o'clock at night. I heard this horrible groaning down another hill. It was like, uh, it was awful. I thought, oh my God, but it almost felt like maybe a baby had been abandoned or something. It was horrible, but I couldn't picture what it could be. But I didn't have the guts to go whacking in the middle of the night because there are some interesting critters down there that are not all wonderful. And in the morning, I then drove around the other side, and it turned out to be a dog that had been very badly treated.
Oh,
And I had to, um, I reported it, but I was very fearful because people who are bad to their dogs are often bad to other things.
sure.
So anyway, I got all involved in that one, but there's so much. But the other fun stuff is kind of fun, but it kind of keeps you up. Is there's packs of dogs, that you can imagine them all like under some lamp somewhere, and they're all just like howling, just howling. They're like just having a good old time. And then at like 4 o'clock in the morning, you just got roosters, just tons of roosters, like,
Oh my.
oh my God, just roosters galore. And it's like, that it's like this, crackety old lady.
Does every family have their own roosters?
There's just so many wild chickens and roosters all over the place.
Oh,
And some
wow.
people have them themselves, but they are definitely part of the soundscape, if you will. Um, every day I take a 2-mile walk on a pretty much completely empty beach with my dog. And
Mm, what a
it's
treat.
it's a big, wide beach, no shade, and yeah, it is an amazing treat. But what's funny about it is my iWatch is constantly telling me that they're giving me sound or loud notifications because the beach is so loud that it gets registered as a too loud noise. That's how.
My gosh.
Yeah, and these are not even, huge waves or anything. It's just the sound of the beach. Um, and of course, there's a lot of music in St. Croix. There's a lot of different ethnicities. A lot of different folks have come from all over the place, from Jamaica and Haiti and Puerto Rico, and there's a lot of Latin and Caribbean music. And then they're just regular American music. So music is a big deal down there. But they also have a beautiful Crucian way of speaking, and you can even if you don't hear all the words, that is a sound you hear. It's a different kind of a sound that you just hear constantly everywhere you go. um, and another thing as a clue is because like here I really don't use any energy. I have a I have a refrigerator on and my pool pump. That's it. I hardly ever have a light on. And so I don't know sometimes when the electrical power goes out, which it does frequently because of we have a similar ongoing fight with our electrical supplier in St. Croix as we do here in the Hudson Valley. But the first clue I have is when I hear everyone's generators going on. Everyone else, they
Oh, yeah.
all these generators click on, and I can hear those. And then I go and look at my stove, and I see, oh yeah, the clock is out. That's oh well.
You do not bemoan that, I can tell.
People say you should get a generator. I'm like, why? Like, I don't care.
I don't need one.
I don't need one. I don't even use energy. I don't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm of
I'm
that
of that
ilk
ilk
too.
too.
Yeah. So the sounds are different, the sounds are definitely different. I mean, the one I didn't want to mention, but I will, I've also at lying in bed at night in St. Croix, I've heard gunshots,
Oh
you know,
dear.
and, I'm sure people in Kingston hear them too occasionally. And I've heard them even here in the Hudson Valley. There were some weird shots a few years ago in the woods, which I reported, because you're not supposed to hunt at night. or anything, or shoot guns in general at night. But in St. Croix, a couple of times it felt like it was right there, on the road below me.
Oh
And,
dear.
and I didn't hear any cars or anything like that.
Oh
So
no.
you're like, so that person is still right there. They haven't
Yeah.
gone anywhere, you know.
Uh,
So that can be the shots can be, can be very disarming. But like everywhere, not like everywhere, but like a lot of times, it's often people who know other people. Not that that makes me feel better, but it's not going to be as threatening to me, So it's tricky. The shots are they stick with you for a while. They definitely stick with you.
so
And
I understand when you're in St. Croix, it's in the winter
here,
months, right?
yeah, but it's still summer. I
So
mean,
it's,
it's always 84 degrees.
oh gosh, how
Yeah.
wonderful is
I
that?
don't even know why weather people exist down there. It's 84 in the day and 74 at night every single day,
Oh,
all through
wonderful.
the 4 or 5 months. Yeah. So it's winter, and the biggest change is that there's a breeze, which you also hear, is a beautiful, we call it Christmas breezes or winter breezes in December and January that are lovely. And then we have short little bouts of rain, like tiny little bouts of rain at different points, not all over the island, but maybe some part of the island will have rain every once in a while, but
And do you
unpredictable.
have the traditional Christmas celebrations with the music and
Oh my God. There's no,
Santa
yeah, this is,
Claus ringing the bells and the
oh, not like
little
that. No, 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 no,
story?
no, no, no.
No?
This is like, it's kind of like Mardi Gras, and it's just one
Oh,
parade after another. We have nonstop festival for 2 months. And
stop.
yeah, right. So one of the great ones is actually called the Boat Parade, and boats out in the harbor will get dressed up with light shows and stuff, and some will have music blaring and so forth. And it's all sort of like a tailgating party. Everyone is along the shore. People come from all over the island to this one strip, and we watch the boats go by, and it's really beautiful. It's at nighttime, so they're all lit up
How
and they're dressed up.
beautiful.
But there's also a kids parade, and then there's something called the adult. And I think the kids parade evolved because of the adult parade, which is very adult, shall we say. Uh, I felt very honored that I was part of the adult parade one year, because it really is mostly a West Indian group, more local. The governor walks down in his fine linens and so forth. And then there's all these different dance troops and neighborhoods and stuff that will dress, in most cases, very scantily,
Mhm.
with huge, wings and so forth. And there's a lot of huge trucks blaring music incredibly loudly, and everyone's gyrating, and it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. But then there's the St. Patty's Day parade. There's a whole week of Christmas festival out in Frederickstead, and that's all music and dancing and so forth. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it's nonstop.
Sounds like parades are a really popular way to celebrate then.
Well, it's just music and dancing is what it is. Just, but moving through time or moving through space. And
Yeah,
everybody loves to
yeah,
dance,
yeah.
people love dancing down there. Like I love to dance. So yeah,
Oh, that's wonderful.
yeah. The other sound down there for me is I play a lot of tennis. So I hear the tennis ball a lot.
Oh, being on a tennis court and hearing a tennis game and versus actually focusing on what you see must be a really wonderful experience. Just sitting on at the net and hearing the ball go
Thwack,
left
the
and
thwack.
right and
Yeah.
left and right to your right hand and hear the person explain.
Exclaiming, yeah, and
Yeah,
kind of hitting the
explaining.
ball,
Yeah.
hearing the energy of the body. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
I actually recorded a ping pong game that way, and it
Uh-huh.
was just so nice to actually hear it versus see it.
Mhm.
It's a completely different experience because, we have two ears, one on each side of our head, of course, and as the ball goes across the top of the head and back and forth, one ear will be playing a more dominant role than the other ear, and and you will be concentrating on the motion of the ball as well as the acoustic efforts going left and right and left and right. So it's for me, it's a particularly wonderful experience.
Well, ping pong is obviously a smaller court. So
Absolutely.
and it's so much faster. I mean,
Uh-huh.
tennis can be fast, but there's longer distances and the spaces are longer, right? Yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but the opening of a tennis can, the it's a beautiful sound. All those things are beautiful sounds to me. Yeah.
Or the pause before the serve.
Yeah, all that. Yeah, the tension, right? That's created.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then the whack of the serve.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, thinking about sports, that's something I didn't talk about, but I row every morning on the Rondout Creek and in the summertime here in the Hudson Valley and there's so many sounds there. And again, going back to this sound as clues or cues kind of thing, we're going backwards when we row, not like kayaks going forward. We go backwards.
Oh,
So
that's
we're
true.
reaching back. So we have to turn to look to where we're going. And we have to have a sense of where we are all the time because there's a lot of boat traffic. We have
Ah,
to get through the shipyard, Feeney shipyard. We have to get by and we have to stay on our side of the creek, like as if we were in a road, and there's also floating logs and so forth, and so you're very much also, and I always try to teach new rowers, when you're in a boat with me, you got to start picking up on cues because one day you're going to be steering your own boat, and you got to know where you are visually, but also sonically. You hear a motor revving up, you're going to turn around and see if there's a motorboat about to leave the marina right behind you because they don't generally look and wait for us. They'll just come out and then you had an accident. So you got to listen for that stuff and be aware of it before it happens. And or hear a boat that's maybe coming in the distance, you know, um, or yeah. Yesterday there were 3 huge barges being moved around with 4
oh
tugboats.
Lord.
We were in our little boats. It was kooky. But, you gotta see those before you hear them. But sometimes the tugboats give a little bit of a honk, but they can't see us, unless
Can't.
they're very far away. Yeah, once they're
Oh
near
my.
us, because 'cause they're like 80 feet up, they can't see down. So
Oh Lord.
we're responsible for getting out of their way, but, you don't have a lot of leeway with the barges, they're so huge. They don't really have they don't have steering mechanisms.
But
They're
that comes back all back to that original premise of listening and defines a sense of place. And this is the sense of your sense of place on the water as you're moving, as you're actually watching what you're moving through,
That's right.
what you have moved through.
Yes. Well, what you're
because you,
moving
because
yeah.
you're going backwards, you're actually seeing things in the past tense in a funny way.
Yeah, you're seeing things except when you're turning around and you look
Of
around and
course,
get
of
that, but
course.
and also the experience of rowing in a single scull where you're by yourself is different from being in a larger boat, of course, because, a larger boat is much more noisy, but, you're also listening to your oars. Sometimes one of our coaches used to say, and I some now say it myself because I coach people, close your eyes and just feel the boat, right? But it's a sense of
Mhm.
feeling, but also hearing when everyone else's oars are going back and catching on the water, your oars have to be doing that at the same moment. And the clues are both like tactile, but also, sonic, because the oars are flipping in their oar rigs on as they catch, and then as you come out of the water, it comes out again, right? And they flip back out and they feather.
Mhm.
So there's this constant, amazing rhythm. I mean, rowing like tennis, it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous sport. And all us, those of us who go out in a single, just love the meditative qualities of it. But the other things are, hearing something, but not quite identifying it, and then turning and seeing a duck, or a whole family of ducks. In the springtime, they're little tiny babies and a mom, and then a month later, they're almost the same size as the mom, but they still are acting like babies, and they don't get out of the way fast enough. And so suddenly, I mean, the older ones know they have to move, but if they don't, we might careen into them. We're going pretty fast, and so You know that they're young ones when they move a little slowly. And then, of course, the Canada geese, the eagle. We can hear eagles,
Ooh, can
tons
you?
of eagles. Yeah, we
Oh.
see them almost every morning. And cormorants are really funny because cormorants go underwater, and I mean, they literally their whole bodies are underwater, and just their heads are out like snakes.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, because the water is warmer compared to the air, they stay underwater more. Right? They don't want to get out. So that's kind of cute. But yeah, there's lots of other cues there. Or there's like, as we go through Feeney's, there's a recycling plant, and we can hear it, give a warning that they're about to do a dump or a crunch or something like this. And there's that, again, that industrial, you know, kind of straining equipment sound. You know, but it's all kind of fun. Here we are in just our little boats going by all this major activity. It's kind of fun. So, yeah,
Right, right. And then that brings you all back to home and back to your country house to rest
try
and
to start my day by the pool mostly. Yeah.
yeah. I'm kind of envious of this image of sleeping at night with all the windows around you and seeing the stars, like being in a tent in the country. That's I love that image. I just love that idea of sleeping out at night in the country.
Yeah, it is really an amazing feeling. And I'd like to believe that I came up with this and, it was all planned. I didn't kind of think all that through, but it worked out that way. But maybe this is a good little thing to close on, going back to the open window, because this is exactly where we are starting in a day or two. October mornings, the temperature in the room will drop below 50. When I climb under the covers to warm my nose, the night sounds are muffled, inaudible, compromised. The window needs to close soon, but I know this is not a casual decision. This is not just closing the window for the evening, but admitting the seasons are moving on, winter is nigh. I already mourn the summer smells and raucous activity. I remind myself as I swing the window closed that this too is part of nature's cycle, that things are quieting down out there. The crickets and peepers are tucked away. Through the glass, I will just have to try a little harder to hear the owls and coyotes.
Oh, wow, Cynthia. What a beautiful, beautiful thank you to the world. That's fantastic. And I want to thank you for your participation in this interview. This is a great way to finish it. Thank you so much.
You're
And I'm looking
welcome.
forward to your next book, which is yet
Okay.
to be defined and yet to be
Oh
named.
no, no, I have a next book. The next book is a similar book, but it's about St. Croix. It's all
Oh,
called
right.
Under the Crucian Sun. And
Oh, it
it's
has
also
a
a
name.
memoir of place. So it's very similar format to my book about the Hudson Valley, field of my own. Um, but 160 photographs, but in this one it also has poetry. So
Oh, wonderful.
yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you for opening my eyes to the sounds.
Which were already there, as you pointed out, you've written about it. It was just like you weren't focusing on the sounds.
No, but it's been an interesting little exercise for myself. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Listening with China Blue. I hope it inspires you to build your own listening practice. This begins as a daily practice of attentively listening without judgment. And ask yourself, what is your version of silence? If you want to learn more about me and my work, go to chinablueart.com and please follow me on Facebook and at Instagram. Thank you.